The election in 1952 was going to be a good opportunity for the Republicans to get back in power. After all, they have lost every presidential elections for 20 years, right? From 1932 all the way to 1938 and going into 52, they were losing. So they're going to nominate a war hero, Dwight Eisenhower. The Democrats are going to nominate Adlai Stevenson, a former Illinois governor. His grandfather was vice president under Grover Cleveland, and a liberal Democrat in the same tradition of FDR. But we basically always elect war heroes. Whenever a war hero is on the ticket, most likely he's going to win, right? And this is Eisenhower, right? And Eisenhower comes to define the 1950s. Now, the Eisenhower presidency, in terms of the debate and the historical legacy, it's actually becoming a controversial one. Not because bad things happened under him, but because historians are finding that maybe it's not so much this lazy period in the 1950s, right? That basically Eisenhower is just going on, just doing as little as possible as president of the United States. The tide is now turning to see whether or not Eisenhower actually does anything as president of the United States. But nevertheless, in 1952, Eisenhower provides what the country wants. And honestly, it is a break, right? I mean, after all, you look at a picture of him as president of the United States, and what do you think? What do you automatically think? It's grandpa, right? Grandpa's president of the United States. And most people, when they go to their grandparents' house, they're basically, it's supposed to be relaxing, right, for the kids, right? Well, that's what Eisenhower's doing. It's just basically just put up our feet and just relax, and stop getting involved in all this stuff. Now, Eisenhower, basically all he had to do was go about the country and just say, I'm Eisenhower, I beat Hitler, I'm not a Democrat. That's basically what he did, all right, when it comes down to it. So the dirty work of politics, and in fact, one of the first modern vice presidential candidates that's going to do the dirty work of politics is going to be Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon is going to be Eisenhower's running mate, right? And so he's the one that's going to go and attack and attack and attack. And in fact, he's basically going to take the last 8 years and describe them in a chemical formula of K1C2, Korea, communism, and corruption. Eisenhower and Nixon are going to win easily. So what is the Eisenhower presidency about? The Eisenhower presidency is mainly about what we call dynamic conservatism. That's what he termed it, right? What does it mean? Well, Eisenhower said it meant being liberal with people. When you concern people, be liberal with them, but be conservative when it comes to money. Eisenhower himself tried to set the pattern, taking it easy. He loved to play golf, and whenever he could, he'd go play golf. So the point I'm making is dynamic conservatism seems to mean not doing much, but it fit into what the country wanted. Mainly it meant about less government and the intrusion of business, right? So let me give you a concrete example of this. During the 1940s, there's going to be oil found off the coasts of the states, right? And so the question is, who owns the rights to this oil? Do the states own the rights to the oil, or is it going to be the federal government? Well, for example, if Texas owned the rights to that oil, do you think there's going to be less regulation or more regulation of that entire industry? Right? Of course, it's going to be less. So the Truman administration argued that offshore drilling rights actually belongs to the United States, to the United States, not to the individual states, and even got the Supreme Court to rule in their favor. Eisenhower comes into office and Congress passes a law that basically overrules the Supreme Court, and Texas gets control of offshore drilling rights up to about 10 miles off the coast. This is the one way that dynamic conservatism is working. It's pro-business in the United States. Now, when he's saying pro-business and being liberal in terms of people, he doesn't roll back the New Deal. Eisenhower was under immense pressure in order, to get rid of it, but he doesn't. He keeps it. He keeps major programs involved. Social Security is still around, and largely thanks to Eisenhower. He could have easily gotten rid of it. He also keeps the minimum wage in place. So, and in fact, even in the 1950s, even increases it. So Eisenhower was pro-business, but not anti-New Deal. And we're going to see during the Eisenhower presidency that some things that the New Deal didn't really touch are going to happen, particularly when it comes to the realm of civil rights.